Bonjour et bienvenue au château de la Vieuville. On se retrouve en Bretagne, proche de 30 minutes de la mer Atlantique et aussi du Mont Saint Michel, Saint-Malo à 40 minutes et de la ville de Rennes. On se retrouve ici sur la belle domaine de la Vieuville, un domaine qui remonte à presque 1000 ans d'histoire dans ce beau pays de la Bretagne. We are here at Chateau de la Vieuville, a 19th century chateau built in the heart of Brittany, approximately 30 kilometers from the Atlantic coast, in an area which has a long history that goes back to the time of the Romans. In fact, the domain of la Vieuville starts with a history of the Roman road between the town of Rennes, which is the provincial capital, and the town of Caen in Normandy. And in fact, the domaine de la Vieuville is on the Roman road, which and actually traverses the estate of the chateau. The chateau was built in the 19th century by the architect Mellet for his client Saturnin des Alleux, who was a noble from this region. Saturnin actually built the chateau as well as the beautiful English gardens that form part of the estate as a gift for his wife, as he thought that the old chateau that they had was no longer up to the standard of comfort that she deserved. The chateau is built in a Neo-Gothic style, which was very popular in the middle of the 19th century, and we would invite you to discover the chateau with us together today. A 19th century chateau built in the heart of Brittany in the Neo-Gothic style. We find ourselves here in the entry of the chateau, and one of the important elements of the chateau is, though the chateau was built in the 19th century in a Neo-Gothic style, it was in fact built from elements of a much older chateau which finds itself about 200 meters from here and incorporates elements from the 17th century all the way to the 19th century. We find here tapestries that date to the 17th century, as well as other elements that have some importance. Most of the furnishings of the chateau were brought in after we purchased the chateau in 2014, and here in the entryway we have a painting from the late Renaissance by the artist Parmigiano, as well as marble representing the young Bacchus, and that is essentially trying to give some good luck for our wine project that we launched last year. We also have porcelain from Sèvres from the 19th century, as well as a grandfather clock that is an 18th century grandfather clock from England with lacquer from China from that same period. We invite you to discover the chateau with us. We find ourselves here in the dining room, which has not much changed since the chateau was originally constructed. In the dining room are many pieces from their original chateau, and including 17th century hunting tapestries that incorporate the life of the nobles in the 17th century, as well as tapestries that are from the royal manufacture of Aubusson from the 18th century. Some of the furniture that we can see are 18th century buffets from Normandy and provincial, as well as we have chairs which are in the Neo-Gothic style, which goes with the styling elements of the chateau. We invite you to discover the rest of the chateau with us. Thank you so much. We find ourselves here in the Grand Salon of the chateau. In the Grand Salon, we have 17th century flooring from the old chateau, as well as boiserie, all of the woodwork that was installed at the time of the origin of the chateau. As far as decorative elements in the Grand Salon are concerned, the only element that is still from the old times is the clock that finds itself. It's an 18th century clock from Meissen, a very important porcelain producer from Germany. We also find other interesting elements of decor, which include a painting by a student of Rembrandt, as well as a marble by Carpeaux, which was a very important artist in the 19th century, and who you can find at the Musée d'Orsay, as well as a painting by Louis Bois de Boulogne. We invite you to discover the chateau. We find ourselves here in the small library which has been constructed in one of the towers of the chateau. In fact, the collection of books that find itself in our library goes back to the 16th century. The oldest book that we can find here is dated from 1534. These books were brought back from the old chateau and installed in this round tower when the chateau was constructed in the 19th century. The collection of books includes some important first editions as well as many scientific books from the 17th century to the 19th century. We find ourselves in the pink salon of the chateau, which was the original music salon and also the salon for the ladies in the chateau. And within the salon rosé, the pink salon, we find furniture that dates to the middle of the 19th century, the Napoleon III period, extremely good quality with tapestries that are of an exceptional quality and design. As well, we have a large collection of porcelain from Meissen, Sèvres, and Limoges of the 19th and 18th century. We also find a cabinet that dates to the 17th century, a cabinet that's Italian with many hidden little drawers. We invite you to discover the room. We find ourselves on the second floor of the chateau. At the time when we purchased the chateau in 2014, the top floor of the chateau was completely abandoned. We have completely redone the rooms that are on the second and third floor. We have 10 suites with washrooms and 2 salons for you to discover. We find ourselves here in an important room on the second floor of the chateau. This room incorporates boiserie woodwork from the 17th century that has been completely painted in a style called en grisaille, which reflects a neoclassical view from the end of the Renaissance period. Within the chateau, within this room, we have woodwork that dates to 1685 and that incorporates many paintings that were done at that period. The principal painting above the fireplace reflects a scene from antiquity, from the legend. This is Paris, the king of Troy, Hermes, the messenger of the god Zeus, and the 3 goddesses. It was Paris's role, unfortunately, to judge the 3 goddesses, which didn't end so well for Paris. But we invite you to discover the woodwork here, very rare woodwork from the 17th century incorporated into the chateau. We find ourselves here in French, les dépendances du château, which is really the outbuildings of the chateau that we have completely renovated over a 5-year period. They encompass about 12,000 square feet and include enough sleeping spaces for 35 people. This area of the chateau is available to be privatized for weddings and your special events. We invite you to discover the dépendance, the outbuildings of the chateau. We find ourselves here in the rosery, the rose garden of the chateau, which was actually renovated in about 60 years ago, and we have continued to add rose bushes to the garden. This area of the chateau is perfect for your special events and also includes a 19th century orangerie that is well suited to parties and special events. We invite you to discover the rose garden of the Château de la Vieuville. We find ourselves here in the French gardens. The French gardens that we ourselves installed after we purchased the chateau in 2014. We are now on an hexagonal, totally symmetrical garden that's about 1 hectare. And in the center of the garden, we find a neoclassical pavilion, as well as the goose that lays the golden eggs. And so we invite you to discover the French gardens of the Château de la Vieuville. We find ourselves here on the Grande Allée of the Chateau, an alley with trees that go back several hundred years and which encompass a very harmonious route and romantic route that takes you all the way to the chateau. At the beginning of this alley, we have an 18th century gate that is classed historic, and this alleyway is a beautiful and romantic road into the chateau. We invite you to discover the Grande Allée du Château de la Vieuville. We find ourselves here in the fabulous English gardens that are at the front of the chateau. The English gardens were, in fact, constructed and envisaged at the same time as the chateau was being built. We find in the English gardens, which encompass about 30 acres or 12 hectares in French, the area around with 3 levels of ponds or lakes that go down progressively, that were initially conceived to accommodate the hydraulic water pumping system that in the middle of the 19th century brought water all through the chateau and the rest of the property. We invite you to discover this magnificent English garden with its historic trees that go back several hundred years. Thank you so much and enjoy your visit.